Hello and welcome to this highlight video of the Rapha Rising event. So this is a stage race with 3 stages and I've done highlights of all 3 within this single video. So as suggested by the name Rapha Rising, this race is all about the climbing and each of the stages features one significant climb. So let's run through them now. We start off with the Climber's Gambit course in stage 1. It's predominantly rolling terrain until you get to the epic reverse KOM at the end, which is about a 20-minute climb. But that is dwarfed by stage 2. Which is the Tour of Fire and Ice, which finishes on the Alpe de Zwift. So for me, that's a kind of 56, 57-minute climb there. And then finally, we've got the Reine course, which has got the majority of the Von Top climb at the end there. So it's very similar to Alpe de Zwift, probably slightly steeper gradient on average. But yeah, those final 2 stages are going to be an absolute killer. So let's see how I get on. So here we are, just about to kick off stage 1 on the Climber's Gambit course. And the key here for me was to keep with the front group all the way until that final 20-minute climb at the end, the epic comb reverse. So I've jumped the action forward now to about 5 kilometers in, and this is the first significant bit of activity that takes place during the race. The first significant climb in this race is a portion of the Zwift KOM climb, and it caught me by surprise. I forgot it was in this route. So as we approached it and the road started to ramp up, I took a quick look again at the profile and I was like, yeah, I remember back to the Zwift Racing League days. There is this little ramp here. So I just speed up the footage here so you can see how this develops. This thing ramps up to around about 10%. And I'm trying to minimize the effort I put in. Don't want to burn matches this early in the event, especially as I haven't budgeted for this energy expenditure. I forgot this ramp was in there, but I'm doing pretty well. Stick with that group for the most part. And as it gets up towards 10%, I'm putting out nearly 500 watts just to stick with everyone. But I make the cardinal sin of not keeping the power down as we roll over the top. So we get onto this false flat. The group really strings out, and I lose contact with group 1 on the road. You see here, as we get on to the descent, I just don't have the energy to stick onto the back of them. And off they go down the hill. Now, as we roll down this descent, I make the decision just to take it easy, let the guys off the front just go. I get in a super tuck just to relax, get a breather, and wait for group 2 to pick me up. Now, group 2, they approach at some speed, and I really have to give it quite a boost to kind of match my speed with theirs and latch onto the back of them. But through luck more than judgment, group 2, they must just keep the pedal to the floor, keep the pace high, and the guys in group 1, they just must have let up the pace, I guess recovering from that big effort up the climb, and everything just comes back together. So group 2 and 1, we knit back together on the road. So yeah, it comes out a net win for me. I didn't put in that extra bit of effort over the top of the climb that would have absolutely killed me, and everything's coalesced. We've got one nice big group 1 on the road, and I'm in it. So the stage is now set nicely for us to enter the Titans Grove Rollers and then on to the final 20-minute climb at the end. Now I'll skip forward the action to the Titans Grove Rollers just before we get to the Titans Grove Reverse KOM. And here I use my typical choppy style. So up the front of these rollers, I really give it some quite high power. And then on the back side, I often freewheel down the back of them. So normalized power-wise, it's probably quite inefficient, but somehow I'm able to cope with it quite well. And if you look at the map, top right-hand side now, this group starts to thin out. And even though my heart rate's quite high, relatively speaking, I think I'm doing reasonably well in the group. It's quite comfortable for me to sit there. And if you see it now, that group is all strung out and we snap into 2 distinct groups on the road, but I'm still in group 1. So pretty nice positioning for me ahead of the Titans Grove Reverse KOM that's just coming up. I'm just going to speed up the footage here as we go up the climb. But I was pleasantly surprised at the pacing here. So I was worried that after the attacks on that first mini climb of the race, I thought this one was going to be absolutely brutal, but I managed to stick within the pack, doing just above threshold for the most part. And then, as is typical with this climb, you get into that final kind of 300-400 meters, and it does ramp up the pace a little bit. Always tends to in races, but yeah, I managed to pop out the saddle a little bit, but quite comfortably stick onto the back of this front group. And there's a nice long descent after this, and I usually find that I'm able to claw back onto the front group proper as long as I'm in loose contact at the back somewhere. Another good thing about this race and this event is they put a proper banner at the top of this climb. So normally the banner's just a tiny little line on the road, so it's not immediately obvious when you've gone through the segment finish, but this time, yeah, nice obvious banner, and there we go, made it through the top of the climb, and we're just coming up to a nice long descent in a second. Time to recover, time to put in the odd power boost just to get in the front group proper. But yeah, if you look top right hand corner at that map, it does look quite strung out. But anyone doing this climb, I'd say don't get too alarmed. If you're in this position after the climb, the descent's pretty long, and as long as you give it the odd boost when the gradient flattens out on this descent, because it is a bit of a stepped descent down. Yeah, as long as you give it the odd boost on the flat, you'll soon find that you can claw back onto any front group, because half that front group, they'll be recovering after a big effort up the climb anyway. Now we're on to the main course of the event, the epic KOM reverse climb. And anyone who knows this one, you start off with this kind of entree climb, couple of switchbacks, then you go over a bridge, and then you get into the climb proper. And my approach here really was to do my own thing, do my own tempo, not worry too much about what the rest of the group was doing. I felt by being part of group one to the foot of this climb, that was a huge benefit for me. I've probably gained, a number of minutes that I would have lost if I'd have settled back into group 2 or 3 on the road. So I already felt like I've kind of got quite a bit on the field in terms of position. I mean, if we look here, I'm 31st out of 140. I thought I'd be lucky to finish in the top third of this race. I mean, I'm not a climber at all. So yeah, anything in the top third I'm going to be very happy with. And I reached the foot of the climb, comfortably inside that top third. So yeah, so far so good. So here things start to get a bit interesting. We hit this descent, and I'm in 35th place. I'm really tired. I get in the super tuck, just relax down the descent, and I put in a pretty tame effort up the hill. At the other side of the descent, these people start to steam past me, and they're going to put my 40th place in jeopardy at this rate. So I get a bit of added motivation because of that 40th position being at risk. Get out the saddle, and then I get onto the back of the guys that have just got past me. A few others approach me from behind, but we start to form this little group on the road. And at this time, there's just over a kilometre to go. And I'm starting to think, if this group really does form, and if we cycle together for the next minute or so, could be the opportunity for a bit of a race within a race, a bit of a kick towards the finish. So here we go. There's 4 of us in close proximity. Guys at the front start to ease off. Guys at the back, they kind of catch on, but then they also ease off. Everyone seems to be pretty happy with their lot at this time. Yeah, and we're inside the final kilometre. So I'm just going to let this play out a bit, because there's 4 of us who are like sitting behind this lone rider out front. And we kind of bide our time. I'm in the saddle doing my average pace that I'd aim to do at the start of this climb. As the gradient ramps up, I just get a sense that the pace is hotting up a bit here. People are like really pushing on. I get out the saddle, and you see me here just approach 400 watts or so as we get onto the steeper gradients in this climb, and it does flatten off at the top. So there's a good few hundred meters of flat running to the finish. We're on the final gradient now before the flat finish, and it's a 2-way effort up this thing, and this chap from Canada, he is just pulling away from me, and I think I am done. I've got my top 40 place though, so I'm pretty happy at this point, but I still think I'm going to give it everything to try and overturn him on the slight downhill before we get to the banner. And for some reason he eases off, like his power drops to less than 3 watts per kilo, and I just put the power down just to make sure that I don't give anyone hope of catching onto the back of me and drafting me all the way to the line. So yeah, I was aiming for top 40 in this event, got 36th, so I'm very happy with that. Yeah, so a pretty good result. I think my decision to go with Group 1 and stick with it until the foot of the climb, it paid dividends. I was probably 10 or so places better off than I deserved to be just by being dragged along in Group 1. So yeah, that is probably the difference between me being in the top 40 and me slipping out of it. So at the end of that race, they published the general classification, and this 3-stage event, stage 1 is being run on a number of instances. So you have to kind of wait a few hours for other versions of stage 1 to be run and for them to collate all the results across them. So I waited quite a while to get as many results in as possible. And at the time I looked, I was sitting in, let me check, 253rd place out of 831. So just squeaking into the top third of the people that did it. So yeah, very happy with that. Of the 3 stages, though, it's probably the stage that's most aligned to my skill set. So yeah, pretty punchy rider, sprinty rider. I can cope with those rollers up to the foot of the final climb. And it was the final climb where I really suffered. I went from like 30th, 31st place and slid back into kind of 35th, 36th. So the next 2 stages with those huge climbs at the end, let's see how they play out. Let's see if I can hang on to this top 3rd placing in GC. Right, now on to stage 2, and it's the Tour of Fire and Ice, and the big climb here is that Alpe de Zwift monster at the end. Now as we get underway, let's just take a look at the profile. So normally, if I was doing Alpe de Zwift, I'd take the Route to Sky option, which has a relatively short lead-in, gets you to that Alp pretty quickly. This Tour of Fire and Ice has got a slightly extended lead-in, and you'll notice that about 6 kilometres into the race there's an intermediate climb, which is actually the start of the epic Com Reverse. So there's a couple of switchbacks there with some pretty significant gradients ramping up towards about 10-11%. So I've got to tackle those before I get onto the Alp proper. So we jump forward the action here to just after 4 kilometres, this tiny climb that caused a split that consisted of just me, but I really did not expect this whatsoever. So I was managing my effort. I thought I'd need to budget a bit of energy to get over the epic Com introductory climb, but then I just wanted to save everything really for the Alpe de Zwift. But look here, I lose contact with Group 1 on the road, just up this really modest climb. I just wasn't prepared to go into the red to chase after them. So the strategy that worked so well for me in stage 1, that strategy of sticking with Group 1 until the foot of the main climb, I've just abandoned that strategy right from the word go on this stage. So right now, I'm in no man's land. I'm going to wait for Group 2 to pick me up and try and make the best of the stage from here. So we jump forward now to those first few switchbacks of the epic Com Reverse segment. So we do these switchbacks, then we head over to the right towards Alpe de Zwift. Now coming into the race, if I was part of Group 1 at this stage, I thought this is where it would be a decision point. You know, do I make every effort to stick with Group 1 and enjoy that fast run to the foot of Alpe de Zwift, or would I let them go up this climb? Because, yeah, I can imagine it fracturing quite a lot through these hairpins. Now I'm in Group 2, I absolutely need to stick with these guys if I'm to get a semi-respectable position in this race, and I just about managed to cling onto the back of them. So you can see here, I am at risk of getting dropped out of this group. We've got one steep pitch to come, then we go over the bridge, and then we've still got a bit of a false flat as the climb rolls over before descending steadily towards the foot of the Alpe de Zwift climb. And as we get onto this bridge, I up my power slightly to about threshold level. They must ease off ever so slightly because I just start winding them in and thankfully get back into the bunch. Just about saved myself there. So we jump forward now to the foot of the Alpe de Zwift climb. Now I'm starting this climb in 51st place, and I'm trying to think of what would be a sensible goal here. I mean, last time on the epic Com Reverse in stage 1, I managed to start in about 30th place and drop all the way back to 36th. So am I going to suffer a similar fate here, where I didn't enjoy a Group 1 ride to the foot of the climb? Or because I'm in a Group 2 and the elite guys have gone up the road already, am I going to be able to pick off any of the stragglers from Group 1? So weighing it up, I thought the latter might be possible. There's 79 riders in this race as well, so I thought a top half finish would be excellent. If I could finish 39th out of 79, that'd be a real achievement from here. Now, for the most part, on a climb of this length, I don't really treat it as a race. It's more of a test against myself. And weighing up what went before, so the switchbacks up the epic Com Reverse and the Italian village mini climb prior to that, those little efforts took something out of me. So I'm not really going for a PR effort up this thing today. I thought if I finish 1 or 2 minutes slower than my PB, I'll be very happy with that. So a time of around 57, 58 minutes, that was roughly what I was aiming for. In terms of powers, I think that represents about a 250, 255 watt average up this climb. That's for me weighing 75 kilos. So as we approach hairpin number 20, I've gone from 51st to 47th place, and I'm catching the guy ahead pretty quickly as well. So that 39th place goal that I had seems pretty achievable at this time. So we skip to the action now just after hairpin 16. So we've just done the steepest part of the climb onto the more kind of gradual gradients now. And I gained a few more places up to 45th, but my pace of improvement has slowed. And then if you look here, 2 guys shoot past me in a second and I'm back down to 47th place. And this was a bit of a theme from here on in. So I'd gain a few places, but then some faster riders from behind, they'd overtake me. So I was really struggling to pick up additional places and make my way towards the 39th place position that I was really after. So now we jump forward to just before hairpin 8. And I'm back up to 45th. So from 16 to hairpin 8, I'd regain 2 positions. Finally, I overtake someone else to get a net improvement up to position number 44. So I've still got some work to do to get in that top 39. So now we've jumped forward, just coming up to hairpin 6. And I'm just about to tick off another place. So down to the top 43 here as I get past this guy, Kerber. Now we jump forward to just before hairpin 5, and you can see that place I just gained is quickly undone as this guy, Lassie, comes past me. And someone who'd been on my tail for a while, Vladson, they kind of get in the mix as well. So I'm dicing with them for 44th, 45th place. After a bit of a duel, however, Vladson, he drops off my tail, and I can see up the road this string of riders. I can see my 39th place right there in front of me. So we skip just a few hundred metres up the road, and I'm onto the back of that train of riders. I've got Landsman just in front of me, and then Tremblay just in front of them. So I duel with Landsman for a bit, eventually pull away from him, get onto Tremblay, get past him pretty soon after, and I'm up to 42nd place, 3 away from my goal. Now for me, this is where things start to get quite interesting. I look at the right hand side on the rider list, and I see there, 2 places ahead of me, and Mr. Simmons. Now I notice he spelled his name the wrong way, with a D. He's sitting in 40th place. He is what sits between me and the 39th place that I need. Now this would just be the perfect finish to a very tough day on the bike, is if I get past Mr. Simmons, spelled with a D, to claim that 39th spot. So now I'm closing in on Simmons. He's just a couple of seconds up the road with this other rider, Kalo. I eventually get onto the back of these two, edge past them, and I think the job is done. So after securing 39th place, imagine my horror when Brooke breezes past me here to put me back into 40th. Now I try to stick with Brooke for some time here, and I'm about a second back on him, not really in his draft. And I push up to about 300 odd watts there, just trying to stick with him, maybe claw back the distance. I keep the gap at about 1 second for some time, but then Brooke just eases away up the road and leaves me for dead in 40th. You know, I was already writing the script, the Simmons on Simmons battle, me coming out on top, getting the 39th spot, but yeah, it was not to be. Now, lucky for me, as we skip ahead, after Brooke, I came across this guy, Para, and at one stage a few hairpins ago, he was 20 odd seconds up the road. I've managed to just eat up the time on him, and I overtake him on the last leg of the climb, just before we come to the finish. Securing 39th position, inside that top half, overcame the other Simmons. Yeah, it's been a pretty good end to a slog up this climb. And as we've jumped ahead to the last few metres of the climb in real time, as I get under this archway and clock my second fastest ever time up out to Zwift. So that ended up being only 23 seconds slower than my PR up out to Zwift, which wasn't originally the intention. I was looking for like 1 or 2 minutes slower. In terms of the effort I put in, apart from those surges at the end to get past that guy Simmons and Para to secure the 39th position, the effort I put in was pretty much exactly as I expected. It just seemed to deliver a time that was a little quicker than I expected. Could be, you know, drafting other riders. Could also be bike choice. When I did my PR, I was on the Canyon Air Road. Here I picked the Trekker. So yeah, slightly lighter bike. In terms of GC, I waited for some results to come in from other Stage 2 races, but at the time of check-in, only 320 results had come in, and I was sitting 161st, so just outside the top 50%. Going in Stage 3, that's really what I was looking to do, is hold that top 50% finishing position in GC. I seem to be about a 50th percentile climber in B category. So yeah, if I was able to stick that top 50% of all finishers, I'll be over the moon. So let's see how it plays out. So let's get Stage 3 underway and take a quick look at the profile. So prior to the climb, there's a winding road, but it's pretty flat. So there's not too much drama until we get to the foothills of the Von Top climb. And then the first part of Von Top is, it's called the Petty KOM segment, and it's relatively shallow gradients, 3, 4, 5%. And then we get into the climb proper, which really ramps up to 9, 10%, with some pitches that are kind of 13, 14%. That shallow part of the climb at the start, even when it gets to there, I'm going to start doing my own thing. I'm going to pick a power and cycle to it, not worry too much about what the bunch is up to. Prior to the climb, though, I'm really going to try and stick with Group 1, so at least I get the time benefit of being carried to the foot of the climb with that front group. So that run into the climb was uneventful. Stuck with Group 1. We dropped only about 10 riders, and as soon as we got onto the petty KOM right here, the group just flies up the road. So my legs were rotten at the start of this day. So I just thought I'm going to pick a power, kind of 240 watts or so, and try and average that up the entire climb. And that includes a petty KOM. I didn't want to get carried away on these shallower gradients and go after the group. So I just let them go and just sat in for a long day in the saddle, ticking away at 240 watts. So I've jumped forward to midway up that petty KOM segment, and you can see it's really drawn out now. Riders scattered all over the road, but they are still some way further ahead than me. I'm 30th out of 40 riders, so my chances of finishing top 50, well, let's put it this way, it's going to be a bit of a struggle from here. We're just coming up to the banner now, and I'm just going to leap forward to more interesting bits higher up the climb. Now I'm going to jump ahead a few kilometres here to about a third of the way up the climb proper, and I get overtaken by this guy Fleischer. I'd just overtaken him. He'd been stationary at the side of the road, and he absolutely steams past me now. He had the polka dot jersey award, so I think he must have just caned it up the petty KOM climb, got the polka dot jersey for the getting the best time up there, took a rest, and then he's just thrashed it up the rest of this climb. One thing I did do at this time is look at the rider list on the right hand side and look who's about 5 places in front of me. It's my good friend Simmons with a D from the previous stage. So at this time he's 1 minute 47 seconds ahead of me. It's quite some time to eat up, but the climb is long, and I think we've got probably another 40 minutes worth of riding. So yeah, can I hunt him down? Can I try and pip him to the post one more time? Now, as stages go, this is a tough slog. There's not much to talk about. Riders are few and far between on the road. And here I'm just approaching this guy Peterson. Finally, going to make contact with someone and overtake them legitimately. And you can see me just gradually hunt the guy down. Power-wise, I've been around about that 240 watt average. So, yeah, nailed on to what I expected, but, you know, way down on what I think I could do with fresh legs on this climb. So I'll have to give it another go when I can attack it fresh. But here we go, gradually overhaul Peterson. But at this time, I had resigned myself to the fact that that top 50% position on this race just wasn't going to happen. Just have to see what comes in on GC, how the other races go. And also interested to see how many people complete all 3 stages in total. So I jump forward another couple of kilometres and I'm still in no man's land. I haven't made up any more places. Simmons has gone a little bit further ahead. He's now out to 2 minutes 20 in front of me. And I'm not going to make that top 50% clearly. But I've got this guy Gargosian in front of me. He's about a minute ahead, but I seem to be just edging in on him. Can I catch him before the line in a couple of kilometres' time? I've slowed down the action a touch as we're getting close to that finish line. Gargosian's 20 seconds ahead of me, but I'm reeling them in. But we've only got about 600 metres to go, so will I get there in time? And I slow it down just a little bit more as I reel them in just ahead of the line. And I couldn't have timed this better. So we get to about 200 metres to go. I just get past Gargosian. And have a chance to zip up the jersey, post up and show off the sponsors as I cross the banner. So in terms of an effort, this race was a real struggle for me. Cardiovascular felt not too bad, but the legs just did not have it. Right from the word go, even the lead into the climb, it was really, really tough. But I guess that's what the whole event's about. That's the back-to-back stage thing, is can you carry some level of fitness into the subsequent stage so you can do some damage and attack the event. So after all of that, I came 248th out of 390 participants in GC, and I waited quite a while for those results to fall in. So that represents a top 64th percentile finish. So not the top 50 I was looking for. But given how I felt in that final stage, I'll take that, finishing the top 2/3 of participants when I was really struggling on the final stage. Yeah, that seems about fair. The big news from the event, and this just shows my pettiness, was that I won the Simmons jersey. So I went to the trouble because it seemed like that M. Simmons character that I duelled with a bit on Out the Zwift and that I saw up the road on the final stage, they weren't logged into Zwift Power. So their results don't seem to have appeared on the Zwift Power GC. So I went to the trouble of looking in the Zwift companion app to find their results on each stage because I noticed them also on stage 1. So yeah, I've got the table up here. You can see our our comparative results. And it looks like stage 1, I beat them quite comfortably. Could have been because I just got in that first group on the road and I rode it all the way to the bottom of the climb. Stage 2, yeah, it was really close. It was only in the final kilometre or so that we really had our battle, and I managed to get past Simmons with a D. And then finally, stage 3, fair play to them. They took off on the Petty KOM and I never saw them again. So, yeah, they did me there, but not by enough to overhaul the general classification on the all-important Simmons jersey. So I've found a morsel of a victory in this event somewhere. Anyway, thanks a lot for sticking with it. I know it's been a bit of a slog watching these stages with these long climbs. Not an awful lot of action until right near the end. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time with most likely a shorter, more dynamic, more punchy race.